Good evening. Today is the 25th of May 2022. Welcome to Primetime News here on TV1 for the News First team, where the people come first. I'm Senitha Senanayaka. Before we take a look at the stories we've got for you this evening, let's take a look at the headlines.
Sri Lanka will have to print 1 trillion rupees, Finance Minister says. Parliamentarians Sanat Nishantha and Milan Jayatilaka further remanded. Demonstrations demanding to arrest suspects over attacks on peaceful protests. Mahinda Rajapaksa's resignation is not permanent, Parliamentarian D.B. Herath says. No change in stance. Thieves won't be protected, Opposition leader says.
අලුත් සූට්ටන්ඩවල ඒ ආපු හොර කල්ලියටම මේ රටේ අවුරුදු 2කමාරක් තුල සිදු වුණු මේ මහා විනාශයට විසඳුම් සපයන්නේ කියලාද කියන්නේ.
Fuel crisis continues. Calling of state employees to work limited. 19 children shot dead at a school in the United States.
Now on to those stories in detail. 6 suspects, including former parliamentarians Sanat Nishantha and Milan Jayatilaka, have been further remanded until the 1st of June. They were arrested over the attacks on peaceful protests on the 9th of May. A protest was held outside the Fort Magistrates Court complex as the suspects were produced in court.
The suspects were moved out of the Fort Magistrates Court amidst tight security on the prison's bus after the court hearing. Six suspects, including former parliamentarians Sanat Nishantha and Milan Jayatilaka, were produced at the Fort Magistrates Court amidst tight security today. They have arrested more than 3,000 people who were there to protect the protest site, but 22 suspects have been named. Only 8 have been arrested. Where is justice? Protesters raised the objection as some people were allowed to enter the court complex for an identification parade.
දාලා නැත්තම් ඉස්සරහට යවන්න පුළුවන් නෑ. ඒක තමයි කිව්වේ. පැහැදිලි කිව්වනේ නිකන් බොරුවට. මොන ලෝයද කිව්වේ? ඕලෝගේ ආයේ මොකද එන්නේ කියලා. එරෙට්ටුවා අවශ්‍යද නැද්ද කියලා දැන් පණිවිඩයක් දෙන්නම්කෝ මිනිස්සු අවශ්‍යද කියලා. මේක අහලා තීරණයක් ආව එකම වෙන මොන පැත්තේ ඉන්නත් එවන්නේ.
Court officials then informed that the people had been called to attend an identification parade, but tensions flared as they informed that all of them were not required to attend the parade.
The Colombo Fort Magistrate has ordered the release of 3 suspects on bail who were not identified at the identification parade today. The magistrate today summoned the Inspector General of Police to court on not implementing the Attorney General's order to transfer Senior DIG in charge of the Western Province, Deshibandu Thennakoon. Additional Solicitor General Aisha Jinasena, who appeared in court, said the Attorney General had instructed the IGP in writing on the 23rd to transfer the Senior DIG. She also said that the IGP had received intelligence on the 8th regarding a pro-government march from Temple Trees to the President's office. The Additional Solicitor General said that the IGP had instructed Senior DIG Deshibandu Thennakoon in writing to take appropriate action to avoid any conflict when the pro-government protesters reached the peaceful protest site at Golface. However, the magistrate said that considering the facts presented to court, it does not appear that Senior DIG Deshibandu Thennakoon took adequate steps to prevent the advance of the group. President's Counsel Maitri Gunaratne, who appeared for the protesters, expressed dismay that despite reports of Senior DIG Deshibandu Thennakoon having a conversation with MP Sanath Nishantha, a suspect in the incident, steps were not taken to arrest him. The CID officers who appeared in court stated that the Senior DIG had only spoken to the suspect to order him not to commit any illegal act. However, the magistrate said that the photographs submitted to the court did not show delivery of orders, but that he was having a cordial conversation with the suspect and moved forward with the mob.
Some protesters from the Gota Gogama protest site held a demonstration opposite Sir Baron Jayatilaka Mawatha that leads to the President's office. They demanded the arrest of those who attacked the peaceful protesters on the 9th of May. Journalist Darshana Handungoda was summoned to the CID this morning. He said he had sent his lawyer today to inquire into this as he was informed formally about the summons.
When we
went inside, we told the police officer that he had not been formally notified except for a phone call last night asking him to come for an inquiry. He wasn't told the reason or the grounds on which he was summoned. We requested the police to at least send a written request summoning him for questioning. The police officers accepted the request. They will now issue a written notice explaining why he was summoned.
This sets a very wrong example at a time like this. There was no written notice. They did not issue a legal document summoning me. They called me and said if they couldn't reach me, they would call someone else and pass on the message. We understand that the system is politicized. The police force is politicized. Summoning innocent unarmed civilians like us for their personal agendas is wrong. This is the right of the people. We need to benefit from it. They are rogues. They continue to be in the same standard even today. There is nothing to gain from this. For the politicians who are amassing wealth, we tell them to pack up and leave.
Police attempted to arrest social and political activist Udita Nishantha in Anuradhapura today. He is the leader of the Sihasuna Surakina Jatika Peramuna, an unregistered political party. I don't trust the police. They once took me and destroyed me. I have not done anything wrong. I have now submitted this to the Human Rights Commission in Geneva. They will get back to me by tomorrow. I don't trust the police at all. This is a false accusation. They say I have planned to burn down houses. I have never been involved in violence. We created the Rajapaksas, Chandrasenas, Jhanas and even the Semasinghas and asked them to rebuild the country. But they are going to kill us for doing that. They have asked me to come, but they are not giving reasons when we send a lawyer. I fought with policies and spoke on behalf of the people who are suffering. Is it something wrong? The police then left the area.
Parliamentarian Namal Rajapaksa appeared in court today over the alleged misappropriation of 70 million rupees through the Krish company. Colombo Fort Magistrate Tininnagamage fixed the case for the 21st of September. The Criminal Investigations Department said it has sought the Attorney General's advice on the case. Parliamentarian D.B. Herath says the resignation of Mahinda Rajapaksa from the post of Prime Minister is not permanent. Mahinda Rajapaksa has played a major role in serving the country. The public opinion here about him could be right or wrong. He made a decision to resign. But his resignation may not be permanent. We can obtain his services together with Runner Vikramasingha.
Even preschool children are chanting "Gota go home." Simply because Ronnie Vikramasingha came into power, nothing new happened. Fuel prices went up. People are in queues for gas and fuel. There was no massive change. But the Rajapaksas now have more security. We will continue our struggle until we eradicate this corrupt administration and until the Rajapaksas are chased out. Venerable Miravatte Kashyapathero expressed these remarks as he joined the protest opposite the President's office. Social activists were among those who joined the protest today.
අගමැති යන්න කියලා බල කෙරුවා අගමැති ගියා ඒ වුණත් ආවෙත් ඊටත් වැඩි අර්බුද තත්ත්වයක් තියෙන කෙනෙක් එතනින් අපේ ප්‍රශ්නේ විසඳෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා අපිට හොඳ ආකාරවම පේනවා
මේගොල්ලෝ මේ තාමත් මේ කල්පනා කරන්නේ මේ දීල් ටිකක් දාලා මේ අරගලේ පසුබස්සවන්න අපි නම් හිතන්නේ ඒක නම් කරන්න අමාරුයි මොකද ජනතාව එක හඬින් කියා සිටින්නේ ගෝඨාභය go home කියන එක
මේ රාජපක්ෂලා ෆේල් වුණා මේ ෆේල් වෙච්ච රාජපක්ෂ ආණ්ඩුවට මේ හොර රොත්තට ජැක් එකක් ගහන්න ආවා අඩයක් තියන්න ආවා රනිල් එයා ලොකුවට පෙන්වන්න හදනවා එයාට ජාත්‍යන්තරය දිනන්න පුළුවන් යට ජාත්‍යන්තර ප්‍රසාදය තියෙනවා කියලා. නුමුත් අපි දන්නවා එහෙම එකක් නැහැ කියලා. එයාට මේ ආණ්ඩුවේ 225ක් නැහැ. එයා තනියම මේ ගේමක් ගහන්න පුළුවන් කියලා හිතාගෙන ආව පඬිතෙක් විතරයි.
The campsite and the area where protests are taking place were fumigated today.
There are long queues for fuel in many parts of the country. This has raised concerns on when the issue can be solved.
Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara says increasing the prices of octane 95 petrol and super diesel will not be a solution. He tweeted that the daily requirement of 95 petrol and super diesel are less than 10% of the market share. Yesterday, the minister told reporters that the government is facing a loss of about ₹1 on every litre of petrol that is sold. People in Anuradhapura came up with an innovative solution that will allow the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation to cover up the loss. They set up a till at a filling station and requested the customers to put ₹1 into it to cover up the loss. They say that there is a loss of ₹1 when selling fuel. People of Anuradhapura decided that they must not face this loss. If there is anyone who doesn't want to face this loss, they can put ₹1 into this till. We will send the coins that are collected in this till by post to Kanchana Wijesekara. He can collect it from the Mathara post office. After increasing fuel costs hundreds of rupees, Kanchana Wijasekara says they are facing a loss of a rupee. The people of Anuradhapura don't want to contribute to these losses. Find out the reason why Sipetco is facing losses while Lanka IOC is making profits. They increase the price of diesel that poor people use for farming. The cost of all goods are going up. They haven't realized that. People in queues for fuel say various remarks expressed by the minister have complicated the issue. Minister Kanchana said there won't be queues after 3 days as fuel cargo has arrived and that it will be unloaded. But we are wondering whether they have unloaded this cargo in a different country. He is lying. I feel that the cargo has not arrived. The minister speaks from his house and says there is fuel. We have been in queues for many days. When it's about to be our turn, they say that fuel is over. There were long queues for fuel in Colombo today. The Kantale filling station is selling fuel to workers from essential service sectors. Tensions flared as some officers tried to purchase fuel in cans. Some heavy vehicle operators filed a complaint with the Kotadaniyawa police calling for a mechanism to sell fuel to them. They have issued some circular and stopped selling diesel to people with cans. I went to the Kotadaniyawa filling station on Sunday, but they didn't sell fuel. I filed a complaint with the Kotadaniyawa police station calling for a plan to sell fuel to us. This complaint is to be taken up, but no official has come here. The filling station in Baddegama received kerosene after more than a month. Tensions flared in long queues for kerosene at the filling station. Our cameras captured some students heading back after their O-level exams on the back of a lorry. Our correspondents reported that only few buses were used in that route due to the fuel shortage.
Some people held a protest this morning by blocking the Hamanthota Katharagama main road in Kohalangala. The protest was held as a filling station that received fuel stocks before fuel prices went up had not sold them at that time. Protesters said the fuel bus had arrived on Tuesday and that the stocks were only sold this morning. Some people began protesting for fuel at the filling station, calling the protest site as Theldi, Pangama. The army intervened to resolve the problem as the protesters blocked roads this morning. Brigadier Jhana Kapali Kumar, the commander of the 122nd Brigade in Vera and Hamanthota Assistant Superintendent of Police, took steps to sell 6,500 litres of diesel at the old price. Our correspondent reported that diesel was sold to farmers with a limit of 30 litres and to 60 vehicles. The Fuel Distributors Association says about 20 filling stations will have to be closed due to the fuel crisis.
We are in
a very critical situation. We are unable to run operations as usual because people are turning violent because of the recent price revision. Distribution was halted that day, but we were not aware of any price revision. We did not receive orders on that day. Later we learned that bouncers were stopped to sell the stocks at new prices. People in queues thought we were hiding them to sell fuel at higher prices. We are taking steps to close around 20 filling stations. We will stop accepting orders when the existing fuel stocks are over. The filling stations in Hamanthota, Maradankadavala, Kakirava, Kadirana and Akurassa are closed. We have requested the Ministry of Defence to provide security for 24 hours for filling stations, but still some stations have not been provided security. The Public Administration Ministry has issued a circular to all state institutions instructing them to limit expenses due to the shortage of resources. All state institutions have been instructed to limit call-in officers for duty from tomorrow. Petrogas Lanka Limited, the state-run gas company, says it will not supply gas cylinders to the market tomorrow. The company has not supplied gas cylinders to the market for 3 consecutive days. But there were long queues for gas in many parts of the country, just like this one in Horana.
පෞගීටිකේ ඩීසල් එන්නේ නැහැ කියලා කෝලින් වල ඉන්න එපා. නමුත් ඩීසල් සෙට් වලට ආවා. අපි ඒ බලාපොරොත්තුෙන් තමයි මෙතනටත් ඇහිල්ලා බලා ඉන්නේ මේ කොයි වෙලාවෙ වෙයිද කියලා.
බොහොම අරාජික තත්ත්වයක් මේක අර බ්‍රේක් නැති බස් එකක් යනවා වගේ රට ගිහිල්ලා තියෙන ඉඳ එක එක්කෙනාගේ මත අනුව මෙතන සූදානම් වෙලා ජනතාව විදියට මේ එක්රැස් වෙලා ඉන්නවා. යම් කිසි බලාපොරොත්තුවක් තියාගෙන මෙතන කවුරුත් නිකන් ගෑස් ගන්න ඇවිල්ලා නැහැ.
People have been in queues at a gas outlet in Srinagar from last morning. Gas cylinders arrived at 5 a.m. yesterday. They supplied 150 cylinders yesterday, but they stopped the rest. They say gas won't be supplied today, but I am 7th in line. Therefore, I will stay in the queue and buy gas. Workers at the gas store sold 35 gas cylinders that arrived yesterday, but it was not enough to meet the demand.
මේ එක්කෙනාට ගෑස් 3-4 දෙන්න බෑ මහත්තයෝ. අපිත් මේ ගෙවල් වල ගෙනියන ගෑනි දරුවන්ට කන්න බොන්න ගෙනියන්න දෙන්නේ මහත්තයෝ. ඔයාලා ගෑස් 3-4 කියලා කඩවල කරන්න ගෙනියන හරියන්නේ නැහැ මහත්තයෝ මෙතන. ඔයාලා බිස්නස් කරන්න මෙයාලා. ඔයාලා බිස්නස් කරනාට ගෑස් 4-3-4 ඔයා මේක ඉස්සරහ වීරා වෙන්නකෝ වීරා වෙන්නකෝ. මට මෙතන ගෑස් එක ඉස්සරහ වීරා වෙන්න ඕනේ නැහැ මහත්තයෝ. ඊයේ දාපු ගෑස් 50නේ. ඔය 50 අයියේ දෙන්න තිබුණා නේද? ඕක ඇතුලේ දාගෙන හිටියේ. මුන් වැඩිපුර දෙනවා. වැඩිපුර දෙනවා ඊට පස්සේ.
But eventually, many people in queues did not receive gas. People in Potuvil received gas today after waiting in line for 2 days.
News First with the people.
We're going in for a short commercial break. Stay tuned to News First.
පුරා ගලන මේ සතුට සුරක්ෂිත කරන්නේ Eslon Inside. Eslon ජීවයයි ජලයේ ජීවිතේ.
Welcome back. You're watching Prime Time News on TV1. Prime Minister Ranil Vikramasingha has told the Reuters news agency he hopes to submit an interim budget in 6 weeks. He was appointed as the country's finance minister today.
Prime Minister Ranil Vikramasingha was appointed as the Minister of Finance, Economic Stabilization and National Policies this morning. This is the first time in which Vikramasingha has been appointed as Finance Minister. The Prime Minister told Reuters he will present an interim budget in 6 weeks and slash infrastructure projects to reroute funds into a 2-year relief program.
Cutting down expenditure, cutting to the bone where possible. We know it's going to be difficult, that's why we are looking at relief, at least a 2-year relief program. There will be interim budget. We cut off all the development work and put more money in. One is to ensure that we can pay the higher interest rates, and secondly to ensure that there's more money for the affected people. But that alone won't do. We have no rupee revenue, and now we have to print another trillion rupees. So you can see how inflation is will have an impact.
Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe commented on the country's financial position at today's COPE meeting. I am inviting the Finance Secretary and the Central Bank Governor to tell us your assessment of the current situation. We have lost all our liquid reserves. We don't have liquid reserves to repay our debt and import essential goods. One way to boost these reserves is to obtain the assistance of the International Monetary Fund. We are on the process of doing that. Since we can't repay our debt, we are going for debt restructuring. It will take at least 6 months. The challenge lies in the next 3 or 4 months. That is why why we have requested the government for short-term bridge financing if possible to at least import essentials. Otherwise we will have to continue like this until it reaches a critical point. We are discussing with India for a $1 billion swap facility.
සාකච්ඡා කරගෙන යනවා දැන්ට ඉන්දියාවෙන් තව 1 billion swap facility එකක් ගන්න ආරම්භ. එන මාස තුනේ මූල්‍ය ශක්තිය කොච්චරක් වගේද සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ගණන් බලන්න. ඒක සාමාන්‍ය මාසයකට මිලියන් 500ක වගේ US ඩොලර් මිලියන් 500 වගේ හිගයක් තමයි එහෙම ලැබුණොත් අමතරව ඒක අඩුම ගන්න අත්‍යවශ්‍ය දේවල් ටික හිගයක් නැතුව පාවිච්චි දෙන්න පුළුවන් කියන මතය තමයි. අපිට ඩොලර් අර්බුදයක් තියෙනවා.
Just as there is a dollar crisis, there is a rupee crisis as well. We have to pay salaries, interest and other allowances like samurdi. We finance this by obtaining money from the central bank. That is what we call money printing. Although we don't like that, we have to do it this time. We know that money printing leads to inflation. If this continues, inflation will rise even further. So we should try to increase our revenue as much as we can. We have identified ways to decrease our expenses by about 250 billion. That is mostly from capital expenses. When did the IMF inform the central bank that the debt sustainability issue should be addressed? As far as I know, the IMF had informed this in April 2020 when the government had approached them for funding. The central bank was not involved, but for some reason it was not processed. At that time, the International Monetary Fund was of the stance that our debt is not sustainable. To rectify this, a proposal was made to hire financial advisors. They had informed the country about that. The central bank governor at that time was informed about this. It was the president's secretary who had been making decisions at that time. Did the president's secretary make decisions on behalf of the finance secretary? High-level discussions had been taking place with him.
On 9 different occasions, starting from 2020, early 2020, we have warned that you need a IMF engagement because there was an international balance of payments crisis. There was a BOP crisis.
Right.
And the problem was that there was a lack of fiscal discipline, especially compounded by the fact that 600 billion worth of taxes were removed. Our access to capital markets was closed. The ratings were seriously exacerbating the issue, so we said IMF is the way to go. The decision to engage with the IMF is a matter for fiscal policy. The central bank can only tell them time without number that and even cry on paper saying engage.
The World Bank says they would not offer new financing to Sri Lanka until the country has an adequate macroeconomic policy framework. In a statement, the World Bank rejected reports that it would provide a bridge loan or a new loan to support Sri Lanka. The statement reads, and I quote, "We are concerned for the people of Sri Lanka," end quote. The World Bank pointed out that it is working with the International Monetary Fund and other partners to advise Sri Lanka on appropriate policies and to restore economic stability and growth. Samantha Power, the administrator of USAID, or the United States Agency for International Development, has spoken to Prime Minister Ranil Vikramasingha. The telephone conversation had focused on how USAID is responding to the country's political and economic crisis. Samantha Power had pledged support to Sri Lanka to overcome the crisis. She stressed the need to urgently undertake political and economic reforms to gain the trust of the Sri Lankan people. The USAID administrator had assured that USAID will closely work with other donors such as the IMF, the World Bank, G7 and others to support Sri Lanka.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Prime Minister Ranil Vikramasingha held several meetings on many sectors today. Minister of Labour and Foreign Employment Manusha Nanakkara and his ministry officials met with the President to discuss plans to expand the foreign employment sector. The minister has proposed to eliminate obstacles faced by employees in the state service when going overseas, and that it should be done by giving priority to seniority. The President had instructed the Sri Lanka Bureau of Foreign Employment to begin language and vocational training programs targeting employment in countries including Japan, Poland and Romania. Prime Minister Ronnie Vikramasingha summoned Health Minister Kheli Rambukhwal and his officials to discuss a shortage of medicines and medical equipment. Ruwan Wijewardena, who was appointed by the Prime Minister to look into the matter, was also present. The Prime Minister had called for an immediate report on the essential drugs available in Sri Lanka and the drugs in short supply. He had said India had permitted Sri Lanka to pay in rupees for medicines worth $200 million imported from India. The Prime Minister's office said a committee led by Health Minister Kheli Rambukhwal had been appointed to amend the National Medicines Regulatory Authority Act. This would be to expedite purchases of drugs and to handle their expenses.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa says he is still ready to take up the post of Prime Minister to uplift the country. But he says he is not prepared to betray anybody or to protect thieves.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa met with trade union leaders at his office today. All 22 million people living in the country know the reason for this destruction. Rather than solving these issues, what is happening today is a power gamble by shuffling the same set of thieves over and over again. The reason I didn't want to take a foolish decision is because I saw this. We need to appoint a new cabinet. We are still ready to take over, but we are not ready to betray anybody. Are you expecting that the gang of thieves in black suits will solve the destruction faced by this country in the last 2.5 years? What is this joke? They have abused the people's mandate. The government has appointed security guards to protect the Rajapaksas. Is this what people want? If we are under pressure to resign, we would resign. I don't like to be the IGP or the DIG who will protect the Rajapaksa family. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa and parliamentarians Dr. Harsha De Silva, Kabir Hashim and Niran Vikramarthna held a media briefing today. The three of us held a meeting with the President for about 2 hours and 15 minutes. The unrest broke out on the 9th. The next day we held a meeting with the President from 8 p.m. to about 10:15. Nalaka Godaheva and Ramesh Pathirana were also there. If someone tells us that we were too late in informing our stance in writing, that is wrong. We discussed this personally. Those who were there can bear witness to this. The President said it will be unfair if we ask him to resign the next day. We told the President that this is not what we mean, and we called for a framework to discuss this. If he is willing to listen to the people's voice, then he can provide a time frame to step down. It will be difficult for you to continue like this. Massive reforms are needed both politically and economically. The Jatika Janabalawega held a meeting in Pannala yesterday. Basil Rajapaksa's Sri Lanka Putujana Peramuna will split in two if they propose a new Prime Minister from their party. That is why they didn't do that. Appointing Ronnie Vikramasingha as Prime Minister is not a threat to the SLPP. Ronnie Vikramasingha is a trusted guardian of the Rajapaksa family. They are unable to sell some assets. These assets can be sold through Ranil. They can then find some dollars. Ronnie Vikramasingha is a person who has no attachment towards national resources. He is a good sales representative. Ranil is waiting for the remaining 2.5 years to pass. He won't be able to come back again. He is in this position due to a stroke of luck. He doesn't have heart. These are people who can betray another person as much as they can. There are fairy tales that were related to us when we were small. These fairy tales have an evil sorcerer who harasses children and scolds them. No matter how much they try to kill the sorcerer, they can't do that. His soul lies with his parrot. Similarly, Ranil Vikramasingha's soul lies with a crow. Ranil Vikramasingha is just one man. How can Gotabaya say that Ranil has the majority? Basil has some parliamentarians who back him. They tell Gotabaya that Ranil Vikramasingha has the majority. If Basil Rajapaksa's parliamentary group leaves, then Ranil's term as Prime Minister will end. So where does his soul lie? That's with the crow. Ranil Vikramasingha is planning to continue for 2.5 years, but we believe that the people must be given a chance to show what they want before that.
The 9 independent parties that left the government have decided to form an alliance. They met at the Communist Party office last afternoon. We have decided to form a legal alliance with our parties in the future to overcome the political challenges ahead. Justice Minister Vijayadasa Rajapaksa has sent a draft of the 21st Amendment to the Constitution to our party leaders. Our 10 parties have been informed that a discussion with the Prime Minister will be held at the Prime Minister's office on Thursday evening, and we have decided to participate in both the discussions.
We're going in for a short commercial break. Stay with Newsfirst.
මොකද මහත්තයා මේ නෑ මේ ගෙදර සිංක් එකේ අයි මහත්තයා ස්ලෝන් නෙමෙයිද දැම්මේ හදිසියට බාලා පයිප් එකක් දැම්මේ නැද්ද මුදලාලි ඊයේ පෙරේදා කඩේ රිපෙයාර් කරන්න ගෙනාපු ගම් චුට්ටා මේ වගේ ප්‍රශ්න වලට හොඳම විසඳුම ස්ලෝන් ගම් චුට්ටා හැබැයි ඉක්මනින් දාගන්න ස්ලෝන් පයිප් එකක්
Eslon gam chutta හැම ගෙදරකම සිටිය යුතු ජනනල කාර්මිකයා දැන් රඟම ග්‍රොසරියෙන් මිලදී ගන්න.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime News on TV1. Leaders of the United States, Japan, India and Australia met at Tokyo for a summit dubbed the Quad Fellowship in order to discuss tangible benefits for the Indo-Pacific region.
The leaders of the United States, Japan, India and Australia have launched a maritime initiative to combat illegal fishing and pledged to invest more than $50 billion in developing infrastructure in the Indo-Pacific as part of their efforts to counter China's growing influence in the region. The meeting of the Informal Alliance, which was set up to respond to China's economic and military might, also discussed climate change, technology and COVID-19, as well as the fallout from Russia's invasion of Ukraine, an issue that has risked division among the group. India, which has close ties with Russia, is the only member that is yet to condemn Moscow's war. In a joint statement, US President Joe Biden, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Australia's new leader Anthony Albanese said the Quad's latest measures are aimed at demonstrating that the group is a force for good and that it is committed to bringing tangible benefits to the region at a time of profound global challenges.
In some international news, a mass shooting at Robb Elementary School in Texas, United States, has left 19 children between the ages of 7 and 10 and 2 adults dead. This school shooting comes just 10 days after 10 people were killed in a mass shooting in New York.
Officials he was killed by law enforcement. Investigators say the suspect was armed with at the start of the rampage. Foreign media reports he may have been a high school student in the area. Texas governor addressing
In more international news, the defamation case brought up by actor Johnny Depp against his ex-wife Amber Heard continues, with the final arguments to be heard on Friday, the 27th of May. The second test cricket match between Sri Lanka and Bangladesh was played for the third day today at Mirpur. During the last few days, Newsfirst has highlighted the plight of many families in rural Sri Lanka. Many donors have now come forward to help these families.
Last week, Newsfirst highlighted the plight of a family surviving in a 4x4-foot concrete room in Hatton. Many kind-hearted donors have come forward to provide a new home to this family. Today, they are receiving food and other essentials to make ends meet.
We hope and pray that they continue to do projects like this by going in search of poor families when times are hard. We thank everyone who supported us.
ගම්මෙද බලපු වැඩසටහන බලපු කට්ටිය සෑහෙන ආධාර බඩු වෙනලා දුන්නා. සෑහෙන කට්ටිය උදව් කරා. ඒ කට්ටියටත් මම ස්තුති කරනවා.
In Walsabugala, Asela Kumara and his wife cultivate jackfruits to feed their 2 children. On days they are not so lucky with their harvest, the entire family spends the day in hunger. But in a fortunate twist of events, this family is receiving what they need, thanks to many donors.
ගම්මැද්ද වැඩසටහන සියලුම දෙනාට පින් සිද්ධ වෙන්න ඕන. අද මට මේ බඩු වගේක් ගෙනල්ලා දුන්නට මේ වගේම උපකාර කරන්න ශක්තිය ධෛර්යය ලැබෙන්නේ කියලා මම සියලුම දෙනාට ප්‍රාර්ථනා කරනවා.
We wish to thank everyone who came forward to join Gammadda in easing the woes of the people.
And that brings us to an end of this edition of Primetime News here on TV1. For the Newsfirst team, where the people come first, I'm Sanita Senanaik. Good night, take care and stay safe.